actually looks fully graded and looks great. Could you tell us about some of those and kind of like how they work if you use them?
Yeah, so that's another great thing about the camera. Let me switch you guys to the inside view of it. Oh, that's the outside. Let's go back on the inside. And then I'm going to plug my HDMI back in so you can see. There we go. So again, you're talking about something like the coloring of your footage. So here under the exposure and color tab is where you would expect to find those adjustments, and here they are. If I go here to color and tone, I have different creative looks and I have picture profiles. So the customers who are going to bring their footage into a nonlinear editor like Premiere or like Final Cut, and they want to do some color grading and that type of thing, usually they're going to do something like picture profile, where they can pick the gamma curves and all those settings. All the picture profiles from previous cameras are here, all the way through PP10, so presets 1 through 10. This is where you would access S-Log. You've probably heard of people shooting in log, and then they're applying either a LUT or going in and adjusting, the colors kind of manually. So that's where you would find, under picture profile. Creative look is what you're talking about, where it bakes that, kind of color and kind of look into the file. And so when I select creative look, you've got, of course, again, that column on the left where it has kind of standard and portrait and neutral kind of looks. And you can kind of see how it adjusts everything as I'm going through these different presets. But one of the nice things is, maybe our preset isn't quite how you want it to look, so maybe you want to go in and adjust. We've added a lot of control. So I've just arrowed to the right, and now I can go through all these different categories like contrast, like highlights, and shadows, and fade, and saturation, sharpness, and clarity, and actually adjust those so that I have these, kind of tweaked kind of how I like it. So, if the picture frame's getting blown out a little bit, I can go in and I can adjust the highlights. I can bring up the shadows here. I have really fine control over, these different profiles. And then, of course, if I don't like something and I've accidentally kind of gone in here and messed it up, you can see right there down in the bottom center, you can reset by pressing the trash can button. So let's go ahead and press the trash can button. It says, hey, are you sure you want to lose these? I can hit enter, and it's back to default. So, and then again, you see the boxes with the arrows and the plus and the minuses. Those are touchscreen options. So of course, I'm coming out of my HDMI right now, so I can't use the touchscreen. But if I were using the touchscreen, I could just quickly use two hands, and I can adjust each of those settings really, really quickly. And that's here under the exposure and color settings there.
Do you think that this menu is going to be maybe firmware updated to other cameras, or do you think that Sony's just going to follow suit with this?
Yeah, we've had that question a lot, and I think that's a good thing. A lot of people are saying, "Wow, I like the layout of this. It's a well done menu." Unfortunately, we can't speak to that. I'm not sure that you'll see it. I think that there's been some hardware changes. Obviously, it's a different kind of screen. We have a different processing engine in the A7S Mark III, so it may be a combination of hardware that's needed to be upgraded. Before we can get to that type of a menu system in other cameras. But again, we always like to hear the feedback, whether you like it or not, and how it can improve, because that's how we develop our products. Is we take actual feedback from photographers and try to implement that to the best of our ability with what technology is developed at the time that will last into the future as well. So. That's another thing that we kind of look into is, because Sony is, the world's #1 manufacturer of image sensors, we kind of see like where the industry is going. And so we can kind of plan ahead with a lot of the features and functionality that we put in there. But it does take, we know where we want to go. We'd like to hear from you guys, a lot. How is that camera working out for you? Would you like it to do something that it doesn't do now? And, we collect that feedback in a variety of different ways. Talking directly to Pro Support reps, talking to retail representatives and stuff at our shops, our authorized retailers like Precision Camera. So, all that feedback, all those conversations that happen over the camera counter, those are super important to us, and we listen. And I think that's one of the biggest things that you've seen in the last few years that hasn't been there before, and it's a really fun time now, to talk to customers, and then the next model comes out, and you're like, see, look, all those things you asked for, the CFast,
that's definitely happened a few times.
Yeah, I think ever since the Alpha 9 came out, and we're shooting at super fast speeds, 20 frames per second, and then people were like, well, I have to wait for the buffer to clear, and then there was talks of CF Express cards coming up, and we were like, man, that technology can't come fast enough. So I think a lot of people are going to be really happy with the dual card slot capabilities, because if you're on a job, you flew somewhere to do a job, and then your cards, either you didn't pack them or something happened, you fill them up, you need an extra. Hey, you can also drop into a store like Precision and pick up some SD cards, pop them into the sides, and you're good. Those are usually really easy to find. The CF Express cards, they're a bit pricier. Obviously, there's some benefits to them, but they're going to be a little harder to find, especially at the beginning. So.
Can we kind of touch a little bit on so I know Sony wasn't, like, oh, we do 12K or we do 8K, and 4K was, kind of perfected, but they did say we're going to be able to do 16-bit RAW. Can you kind of talk about like those features, and what recorder is going to be required for that?
We're still working on a list of I don't want to say approved recorders, but the best recorders that are out there for shooting externally, and especially 16-bit RAW. Those are ginormous files. So we're working with a number of the manufacturers out there that make those decks. So I don't have any answers for you just yet, but the most popular ones out there are probably who's going to come out with the first ones. But yeah, so externally you can shoot 4K up to 60p with 16-bit RAW, 422, 16-bit, of course. So that's going to be tremendous. It's much higher bit rates. That's the 1,200 megabits per second. I think a lot of customers are going to, if you're shooting that way, you're going to be thankful that you're shooting to an SSD rather than some, CF Express cards, especially at the beginning.
You're gonna get a 1 terabyte.
Yeah, you can't find those cards yet. So so you can pop in an SSD and you're going to be good to go. The other thing that you got to be considering whenever you're shooting that way is in the camera itself there aren't waveforms. There's no vector scope. There's none of that stuff. So that stuff can happen externally on an Atomos or an Odyssey or whatever monitor that you want to use externally. So yeah, 60p is the most you're going to output in terms of the frame rate. Internally, it can shoot 4K up to 120p, and there are a few requirements. You have to be shooting the XAVC HS 4K format to access 120. It doesn't. When you're shooting all intra, it is not available. It's only up to 60p, unless you switch over to S&Q mode. Okay. And S&Q is slow and quick. Came from our ProCam lineup. So if you're familiar with the FS5, FS7s, FX9, it's the same feature, SNQ, where you can pick kind of the parameters. So you say you want to capture at 120 frames per second, but your end product, you want it to play back at 30p or 24p or 60p. You set those parameters ahead of time, and as it's recording, it's rendering that video at that targeted output. So it is really convenient, because then that's one less step you have to do in post, to go and slow that down. But it's just one of the requirements. If you're going to shoot 4K all intra at 120p, you need to be shooting in S&Q mode.
Okay. The S&Q mode, now that you're speaking of that, it's definitely made my life a lot easier. For instance, when I shot a concert, I was just switching between S&Q mode and manual, and I was getting all my slow-mo shots just in the S&Q mode in a program mode. But it was really, really fast. And if I wanted to look and playback and show people, just right then and there, slowed down all the way.
Yeah, that's key. There's a lot of photographers I talk to who, they're on a job and the client is like, hey, I want to see an example of, what you're shooting. Mm-hmm. And, you can show them on the back of your camera, but, in standard movie mode or regular movie mode, it's going to play back in real time. So they don't really get to see that vision of, hey, I'm going to slow this down, when I get back to my computer. But in S&Q mode, yeah, you can shoot that and then immediately turn around and say, hey, look at how cool this looks. Hit play, and it's going to be all nice and slowed down for them, which is really impressive.
So I did personally have a question. It was from a customer of mine, actually. We were messaging back and forth. He actually bought an FX9 when it first came out.
Nice.
And I forget the exact model, but he had the extension pack that allows it to do 16-bit RAW, I believe.
Yep, XDCA, yeah.
He pre-ordered already his A7S III, down payment, everything. Now, there's definitely differences between the two cameras, obviously, but his question was, is there any difference on the 16-bit RAW that you would get from your Sony A7S III versus what you'd get on your FX9?
Ooh, so that's a great question. I'll have to kind of go back and look because I don't know off the top of my head.
No, I understand.
16-bit RAW is going to be 16-bit RAW. Of course, 422, 16-bit. I mean, that's a lot of data. I have other customers as well who are intending to have both the FX9 as well as the A7S Mark III, and kind of marry those in a situation where you're using one camera and another. If you're shooting RAW to both, you should have no problems matching the two together. No problems at all. So yeah, because you've got so much headroom in the RAW space that you can do pretty much anything to it. It's super malleable. But yeah, definitely a lot of customers that have purchased the FX9 are also kind of like looking at this, and some of them have a bit of that buyer's remorse. They're like, oh, maybe that's the one I should have had. But again, they do some different things.
Yeah, there's definitely differences. I'm trying to think who. I think the YouTuber Potato Jet actually did a really nice comparison between the FX9, the S3, and the ZV-1. So if you do want to know what the main differences are, that video is out there. Other than that, another question I have is, who do you say is going to be your primary customer for the A7S III? If I know there's probably a bunch of different ones, but who do you think's really this camera's going to be for?
Yeah, so primarily it's going to be for a lot of movie and video cinematographers, more so, kind of on the art side of things than on like the broadcast side of things. Broadcast is all about that speed of acquisition, turning it, and then getting it out for people to digest. The creatives that are out there that have kind of a vision and they want to have that control over, of course, the depth of field because you're using a full frame sensor. Being able to squeeze it into small spots, being able to use it with a smaller crew. Those type of situations, you're going to see a lot of, I think a lot of wedding videographers are going to be picking up the A7S Mark III, but a lot of small production houses as well, because again, it's going to be this, with this form factor, and if you're already using, an FS or FX series camera, it's the same mount. So all those lenses can migrate over here, and you can use it, for whatever situation kind of calls for this kind of smaller form factor. Or capability, So I think it's kind of calling to a lot of those individuals, a lot of the cinematographers. But honestly, 12 megapixels is plenty if you're making content for social media, for online, kind of consumption. So a lot of people think, oh, well, 12 that's nothing. In the age of 60 megapixels and 42 megapixels and all this stuff, I need more pixels, and it's kind of like, well. Do you really? I don't know.
Now, I'll be the first to say I shoot with the A7R4. I do not need that much resolution. Yeah. I definitely do not. Now, for certain cases, yes. But for most of the stuff like that I personally do, it's going on Instagram.
Yeah, I know we're in Austin, and so you see the guys who are rolling around in giant trucks, lifted and all this stuff, and it's like that's cool if that's your style. Nothing against that. You're not really using that truck to haul wood and dirt and stuff around.
That's a really good comparison.
It's like you don't really need that. You could get away with a sedan or maybe a Prius or something, but it's their style. So I'm not going to question that. But when we look at cameras, we think about specific purposes that they're really great at, and of course with the A7S Mark III, it's going to be really fantastic for movie creation. But again, you can still use it for stills, and it's going to do some really amazing things in low light. in situations where you don't have control over the lighting, in situations where you're going out to maybe like West Texas and you want to take some astro, it's really going to help you frame up quite a bit, because you can gain that ISO all the way to 400,000. Lots of different situations. I think journalists will start to kind of like it as well. I know a lot of journalists like to use 24 megapixel bodies, but with the ability to kind of move up to the upper ends of the ISO ranges and not have a super noisy image, and still be silent, I mean, that's a game changer for a lot of folks. And earlier, I guess earlier in the week, we made the announcement that we were going to be supplying alpha cameras to all the AP photographers around the world. And that's a huge deal for us. A big part of that was the Alpha 9 Mark II's ability to shoot completely silent, up to 20 frames per second with autofocus and auto exposure calculations. It's just the combination of all the technology that kind of comes together to make that camera really usable in those situations, that makes it a game changer for journalists. So I think you're going to see this in a lot of journalists' hands as well, especially as more photographers are being asked to do not only photo work, but video work as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, Van, before we head out, we got all my questions taken care of. And if we get any questions from the Facebook Live, let us know, Casey. But yeah, is there anything else that you're excited about that you want to talk about that we haven't covered?
I mean, I'm just happy to have the camera.
Oh, I'm really
this camera right here. I mean, we've been waiting. I was in Las Vegas at NAB when the first Alpha 7S launched, and I remember kind of thinking, like, is this really the right crowd? Like, what are, NAB is all the broadcasters and this and that. And I remember walking onto the show floor the first day, and they opened the show, and we had, the crowd was immense. I mean, we couldn't even take breaks that day. I mean, we were just talking the whole time, and it was fun. It was great because we found so many people that were enthusiastic about it. And I wish we could, we're in a different circumstance, and we could actually have, the same type of gobs of people, coming in and playing with the Alpha 7S Mark III. But obviously, we're in the situation that we are now, and I know there's a lot of people that have reached out to me after the launch, and the announcement, and they were super stoked about having the Alpha 7S Mark II successor finally, and all of the features that we've introduced. So no doubt it's going to become a big part of a lot of photographers' arsenal out there. And can't wait to see the images that are recorded off it. There's already some really amazing stuff up online. If you haven't gone to see, like Philip Bloom, of course, has shot some really amazing content, 4K. And especially when you start to think about it, it's like, okay, this is 4K in the dark, and he's shooting slow motion, which requires a lot of light usually. And it's just amazing to kind of see, how the differences in technology can be applied to create, the artwork that he made. So, and so many others.
Nice. Well, I think that is going to wrap it up, everyone. Thank you for stopping by. And thank you, Van, for, showing us the A7S Mark III and kind of what it can do and teaching us a little bit about it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And remember, everyone, make sure to check out our Facebook. We're doing Facebook Lives about 3 times a week. And if you want to pre-order, you can go ahead and go to precisioncameraatx.com and get those pre-orders for that A7S Mark III. And I want y'all to know the list is pretty big, so make sure you get that in sooner than later. All right, Van, have a good one.
Thanks, you too. Stay safe.
I think we're good.